Okay, so this is my 1994 Yokomo YZ10 runner. I've made many videos of this car, running it in various races, running it at last year's Vintage Nationals, practice videos, all kinds of stuff. I ran it this year at the 2016 Vintage Nationals, and I ended up winning the four-wheel drive class. I had a really, really close battle for TQ with two of the other cars in the field. They were both using Losi XXX4s. The A main was quite tumultuous, I'll put it that way. There were three of us who, could have gotten the win. It could have gone either way, but we had a variety of self-inflicted wounds, if you will. We all made unforced errors. One of the guys had a lot of mechanical difficulties, so he ended up dropping out of the race. So it was between the other two of us and the other guy. On the very last corner, his right rear shock dumped on him, and he spun out, and I got around him. That's been the source of a bit of controversy after the race. But in any case, I got the win. And this buggy feels as probably the best that it has ever been with the setup changes that I've made to it for that race. So I want to share with you what that setup is, so that if you have a YZ10 runner, you can sort of use that as a baseline. This particular setup is for Walk Hit Hobby and Raceway in Connecticut, and their particular track surface. When they built the track for this year's VONATS, they decided not to treat the dirt in any way, just to leave it kind of as natural dirt. It's still pretty hard-packed dirt, and it naturally, dusts up a little bit. So for that particular surface, the setup I have is as follows. For the front and rear shocks, I'll start with the front shocks. I have, these are just standard associated shocks with threaded collars or threaded shock bodies. I have number 3 pistons, 35 weight oil, and 3.03 inch limiters on the inside of the shock body for down travel limiters. I'm also running on the outer hole on the arm and the inner hole on the tower. Okay, on the rear, I'm running number 2 pistons and 40 weight oil and 0 down travel limiters. This is with a 95 rear tower. I'm running on the middle hole on the actual tower, and on the arm, I'm running on the inside of the arm. I did notice that the rear was a little bit bouncy when I was driving this around the track. It's manageable, but I may go down to something like a 35 weight oil or lower, depending, in the future if I run this again at a future VONATS race. So start with 40 weight, see how you feel with that, but accept the possibility that the rear might be a little too skiddy for you, and you may have to go down in the oil a little bit. I also am running a rear sway bar. Okay, bear that in mind. I have a 95 rear Camber link plate, and maybe it's a little hard to see here, but on the Camber link plate, you can see this is the hole that the plate mounts onto. There are 2 holes here, and there are 3 holes at the bottom. I'm running on the lower inside hole here, so that minimizes camber gain. That's the lowest camber gain setting, and it raises the roll center. Okay, I was originally running on the bottom middle hole, but the car was a little too loose coming out of corners, so I ran on the inside hole here, and it was a night and day difference in how much rear grip I had. And made it a lot easier for me to comfortably drive the car at a higher limit. For that particular track surface, the Walk-It track surface really prefers that you run low camber gain, whether it's a 2-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive buggy. At least for the rear of the car. The front of the car is a different story. I was originally running 22mm ride height in the rear and 21 up front, but that 21mm ride height was with this shock at the inner hole. When I moved it to the outer hole, I did not change the preload, so the front's actually riding a little bit lower than the rear. I haven't actually measured the ride height. I don't care because the car feels perfectly fine. Any other setup changes? I mean, 1-degree camber, front and rear, roughly. It's a pretty simple car to set up. There's not much else to do. I think the rear diff is running a little tighter than the front diff. And the other little trick here I think I made another video about this, is the locked center pulley. You can get these from a few different sources by this time, but this particular one is from 3 Racing. They make various pulleys of different teeth counts for certain types of drift cars. So they happen to make a 15-tooth pulley with a 4mm inner hole that mounts perfectly on this lay shaft, and it has 2 threaded holes to screw grub screws into. There's one there, and then there's another one there. So you mount that on, you use blue Loctite on both of those holes, put the screw in and tighten it down. Make sure you check this after each run. It should be fine, but if you're over geared and the motor gets really hot, then that heat will transfer. Since this pulley is close to the motor, the pulley will get warm and it will slowly deactivate the Loctite, and then this will get loose, and then the pulley will spin freely. Okay. So previously I had this overgeared. This motor was coming off at 220 or so, and after a couple of runs the pulley would come loose. So I went down a few teeth on the pinion. The motor runs perfect now. It comes off at 160 or 170, and the pulley's been perfectly fine for the entire VONATS weekend. The gearing I'm actually running is, I think this is a 21-tooth pinion, and the spur, let me see if I can get this here. It's either, I think it's an 81-tooth spur, I think, but I could be wrong. If it's not an 81, it might be an 85. So you can start with that. What's great, by the way, so let me comment a little bit about the controversy of the finish for the 4-wheel drive buggy race. So what ended up happening was the guy that I ended up beating, he had a XX4, and one of the friends that I had that was marshalling the race, he noticed that XX4 was having suspension problems somewhere around the middle of the race, if I remember correctly. So he knew that that car was going to have issues. It just so happened that on the very last corner, he spun out as a result of his right rear shock blowing out. So there was a lander off of a jump that goes into a left-hand turn, and the right rear shock blew out, and the car just spun out, and he almost T-boned the pipe. But he was able to recover and, floor it basically to the start-finish line, which was just a foot or two away from that corner. I was not far behind. I was catching up to him from having made a previous error. And I got around him as he spun out on the inside of the corner, and we both just nailed it to try to get to the start-finish line first. If you look frame by frame at the actual video of the race, which I will be posting that shortly, you will note that the nose of his car touched the start-finish line just before mine. So if it were a photo finish race, he would have won. But because he has a XX4, his transponder cannot be mounted very close to the front. The car makes it difficult to do that. His transponder is mounted closer to the middle of the car. My transponder is mounted closer to the front of the car. The YZ10 gives you a lot more options for that. I have it here on top of the servo, but if I really wanted to, I could probably just put it right here. So this is one of those extremely rare cases where the actual location of where you mount the transponder makes a difference. I ended up winning by 1/1000th of a second. Okay, that's the closest margin you could ever win by in an RC race. It's like a 1 in a million chance that could have happened, right? So there was a bit of controversy afterwards about whether he should have been given the trophy because his car touched the start-finish line first, or whether I should be given the trophy because my transponder crossed the finish line first. In my view, since we do lap counting with transponders, it's really a transponder race and not so much a car race. Now, maybe I'm just saying that because I won and I don't want to relinquish the trophy, but it's kind of, I wouldn't say it's serious controversy. It's more like friendly controversy about, who deserves the win. But it was a great race. It was a phenomenal race. And this car behaved better than it ever has in the past. In previous years when I was running the car, I was running the one-way center pulley, and I was trying to do, play all these tricks to slow down that one way so I can get heavier on the brakes going into tight corners. And just over this past year, I figured out how to lock the center pulley, and it's just made a world of a difference in how this car drives, how hard I can get on the brakes, how much I can manipulate the pitch of the car in the air. It just drives so much better now. And if you have the opportunity to drive something like a 94 YZ10 with a couple of 95 parts on it, it's a phenomenal car. It's so much stronger than a XX4. You could smash the hell out of this thing and it's just not going to break. And it's just as fast. I was putting in lap times that were just as fast as the fast XX4s there. We all qualified within 1 second of each other on a 6-minute qualifier. So it's not like this car is slow in the right hands. It's actually quite good. So anyway, I just wanted to share with you my thoughts on this car. And, obviously the setup that I presently have. I love this car. I just, after the race that I had, I can't love this car more than I already do. It's just phenomenal. So, yeah, that's it. And thanks for watching.